let's take a quick look as to how the upcoming iPadOS 13 is going to allow us as photographers to finally leave our laptops behind when we're shooting out in the field. Hi folks, this is Juan Pons, and I want to spend a little bit of time of showing you guys the upcoming features of the newly announced iPadOS 13. I say newly announced, but it was announced a few months ago. And one of the things that made me most excited about the new iPadOS was that it's going to finally allow us to connect external devices to our iPads and manage those. You know, external devices like a card reader as well as USB external drives. This is going to open up a lot of possibilities. You know, as photographers, we tend to go and travel quite a bit, right? And what that means is that we have to carry all sorts of gear. We have enough to carry with our cameras. And now with mirrorless, things weigh a little less, not a whole lot less, but a little less. And I've always wanted to replace my laptop with an iPad to be able to shoot or be able to use my iPad to download images when I'm out in the field and not have to rely on a laptop. You know, and external hard drives and all sorts of other things. And I think we're almost finally there. Apple recently, like I said, announced iPadOS 13, which adds this new feature of support for external devices. And this is going to be a game changer for all of us. This is what a lot of us have been waiting. That iPadOS is going to be released sometime in the fall. And what that will allow us to do is connect devices like this, an external card reader, and SD card reader here with an SD card, will allow us to connect it to the iPad, be able to download the images from this card onto external drives even, and download and use those externally. So I'm going to give you a little bit of preview of what that looks like. So, like I mentioned before, and we can talk a little bit about the card readers. This is a card reader from SanDisk. It's a USB-C card reader and a UHS-II card reader. I'm using UHS-II cards with my Sony cameras. And if you look closely with these UHS-II cards, they have 2 rows of contacts in the back. And that allows these cards to be a lot faster than the traditional SD cards. These cards, the one from Sony, are the fastest cards out in the market. And I'll have a link on those for you out in the show notes. And these allow you to read and write at 300 megabytes per second. That is a huge improvement over the 90 or 80 megabytes per second that you're getting from traditional high-speed SD cards. It's 3 times as fast. Now, there's a bunch of UHS-II cards out there. But not all of them perform as well as these from Sony. These from Sony read at 300 megabytes per second, and they write at 299 megabytes per second. There are other cards out there from other manufacturers that can read at 300, but they write at something like 150 or 180. They don't approach anywhere near the 299. So make sure that you pay attention to the cards that you're getting. In any case, so I'm using a high-end card reader from SanDisk, a UHS-II USB-C card reader, because for the iPad Pro, I'm using here an iPad Pro, 11-inch. Those have a USB-C port on them. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to plug this onto my iPad, and you'll see that we'll have access to this, and we'll be able to download images, folders of files with this. So let's take a look. Okay, here on my iPad, I have an application called Files. So this is how we're going to manage the files that we're moving across from these card readers. So let's go into Files. And as you can see here on Files, on the left-hand side of the Files interface, we have a number of different options. One is my iCloud Drive, which is the storage space on the cloud that you can get from Apple. And you can store all sorts of things there. That is not really useful for us when we're out in the field because that needs a fast internet connection to upload the images. And when we're downloading raw files, especially big raw files, that could be very slow and not all that effective. But you have another option here called On My iPad, and this shows you the iPad storage. This iPad that I have here is a 0.5 terabyte iPad, and I purchased that on purpose so that I would have enough space to be able to copy images when I'm out in the field. You know, you could get up to a 1 terabyte iPad today. So that's a great option for downloading images right into the iPad. So you have other options here. You can access Dropbox directly from here if you wanted to, or all sorts of other apps are able to add locations here so that you can access files and drop files for access on those apps as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that more later on. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my card reader. I'm going to plug it in onto my iPad. And what you're going to see is on the left-hand side, now we have an item under locations called Untitled with a USB symbol. So I'm going to click on that. And now I can take a look at my file and folder structure inside this card reader. So I know that my files are stored on the CIM folder. So I'm going to click on that. And you can see all sorts of folders here that I have different shoots. These are actually correspond to dates. So for example, this was in 6/27. So I can click on that, for example. Actually, let's go to 6/28. And I can see the files that are in this folder that I shot on this day. I have my camera set to create a folder on a daily basis. I can then click on one of these files and I can get a preview of the files, or thumbnails, if you will. And I can go ahead and scroll through this and actually look at all of my images. Now, unfortunately, there's not a lot for us to do here in this interface. I do have a done button that basically takes me back out. I have a little listing button there on the upper left hand side that gives me the list of files in the folder that I'm in, so I can actually jump to another file immediately if I wanted to. And I have a share button that allows me to then share this file with somebody else if I wanted to. Now, what I can do is I'm going to click here on the Done button, and I can go ahead and start copying these files. But how do you do that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this folder, the 10490628 folder, and I'm going to copy it onto this folder, Favorites. That's under the Favorite subcategory. If you click here, I'm going to show you where that is. That images folder is on my iPad itself. So I'm going to click on my iPad, and you can see down here in the middle that I have the images folder, and I can click on it and it highlights it on the left. It's the same folder as we saw earlier. So what am I going to do is I'm going to click back on Untitled, go into DCIM, and I'm going to grab my 628 folder, and basically I'm going to drag it over on top of images, let go, and the iPad is now copying the images over. Unfortunately, we don't get a really good feedback mechanism. Now, let me state that what we're looking at right now is a beta version of iPadOS 13. So this may not be in the final form when it finally comes out. That's why I'm calling this a preview. But now I can go here into images, and here I can actually see progress taking place. You can see that the folder that I just copied is grayed out. There's a items countdown that you can see the number of files that are being copied, and I have a little progress bar there that shows me how much of those files have been copied. Now remember, this right now I am copying onto my iPad, not onto an external device or anything like that. My plan is when I'm on the road, I always like to have my files in 2 different places. So my plan for when I'm on the road is to copy my files onto my iPad and then copy from my iPad onto an external device so that my files are in 2 different places. And then I can go ahead and format my cards so that when I'm out in the field, you know, I have those cards empty and ready for me to reuse. And my files are safe in 2 different locations in case one of those, my iPad or my hard drive, gets lost. And by the way, here's a tip for you. Make sure that you keep that hard drive and that iPad on 2 different bags, 2 different locations, 2 different pieces of luggage. Don't keep them all together, because if you keep them together and that bag gets stolen or lost, then you lose everything. You lose your primary storage, which in my case may be the iPad, as well as the backup. An iPad I can replace. Yes, it hurts, costs money, but I can replace that. The images, on the other hand, I may not be able to replace as easily, so I want to have a backup of that somewhere else as a safeguard. Okay, so now this is done copying, and you can see here that the folder has been copied over, and it shows me that I have 154 items, and I can click on it, and in a second I'm going to see all the images. Now all these images were copied from my external device or my SD card reader onto my iPad. Really, really cool. Now you may be asking yourself, now that I have these in here, can I edit these? You can. That's the short answer. The long answer is that yes, you can edit them. There's multiple ways of doing that. Right now, the way that this is working, especially with Lightroom Mobile, which by the way, I use a lot and I love. And if you guys want me to do a video and a review of Lightroom Mobile, let me know. Send me a message on Facebook or add something, a note in the comments, and I'll be happy to do one, because I'm starting to love Lightroom Mobiles. You know, almost as capable as the desktop version. Not quite, but it's getting there and it's really good. But if I wanted to bring these into Lightroom, unfortunately, I have to go into Lightroom, and at this point in the game, I'm going to launch Lightroom here, and I'd have to import these files into Lightroom. Not very optimal. And what I say by import is that another copy of those files are now going to be inside of Lightroom on your iPad. So you could have two copies on the same device, taking up twice as much space. Yes, you could import them from the files section of your iPad onto Lightroom and then delete them from files if you wanted to. That's not what I plan on doing, but you could do that. But at this point, you need to go in and import them in, and that is not an optimal solution. I'm going to show you here real quick how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new album, and I'm going to call this test import, for example. And now when I'm in test import, I can go ahead and either click on the button down here on the lower right hand side and say from files, and I can navigate through files. I can go into images, go into the folder that I just selected, hit select, select all, and hit done. Oops, sorry, nope, select. You can tell this is all new, and then hit open. And it's not doing it. So, oh yeah, sorry. It takes a little while. Again, this is beta software. And it was parsing through that list, and you can see now that Lightroom is importing these. Now, it's actually quite slow. It takes a little bit of time to import them, but here they are starting to show up. And now I can edit these in Lightroom Mobile. But like I said before, because we imported them, now we have two copies of these files. They're in the file section of your iPad as well into Lightroom Mobile. My hope is that once iOS 13 or iPadOS 13 gets released, that we will see Adobe update Lightroom to have direct access to folders in the file section. That would be a game changer, as well as writing of the XMP sidecar files. That would be incredible, because all that means is that then when I'm done, I can take these files right from this device and copy them over to my desktop, and then I'm done. So I think this is going to be an amazing tool for us going forward. It's going to allow us to leave our laptops behind and carry a much smaller device that the battery lasts a very long time. And honestly, I have found that working with Lightroom Mobile on the iPad and using the iPad Pencil is actually, or the Apple Pencil, is actually an incredible experience, because you're working, it feels like you're working directly with the image, especially when you're creating masks and all the different kinds of masks, whether it can be the radial mask or the brush adjustment tool, any one of those. Working directly on the screen is a lot more fun and a lot easier. Anyways, I hope this gave you a really quick introduction of what this is going to look like when iPadOS 13 gets released. Obviously, when this gets released, I will be doing a much more comprehensive walkthrough on how to use your iPad as a workflow tool out in the field. Any questions, comments, concerns, or if I got anything wrong, please, please, please post in the comment section or send me a message on Facebook. Now, if you like what you're seeing, I would appreciate if you could subscribe to my channel and then click on that little bell also so that you get notified when new videos are, when I create new videos and post those new videos. Until next time, take care.